folks. For those of you who actually saw my last videos around battery packs, I've switched gears. Really switched gears. I was actually building a 10 parallel, 10 serial, a 10S10P battery, which was double the size of this one, which it was just a little too big for what I wanted to do with it. I was going to put it on an e-bike, but it was too long, it was too heavy, it was just too much. So I've cut this down. I'm going back to a 10S5P. So that gives me 36 volts, 5 batteries. These batteries here are 2700 milliamp hour each. So that should be plenty of power for the little e-bike that I'm putting together here. But what I did want to show are these little devices. So they are, let me just find a box. So, hopefully you can see this. These are called Vruzend, made in India. There is a distributor here in the US, but it is a pretty cool little device. They're a little expensive, but it does make putting e-batteries or putting batteries together much easier. They give you enough in one of these kits to put, I don't know, I've got 50 cells here, so you can put at least 50 or 52 cells in each one. I ended up buying two of these kits because I want to put 2 packs together. But yeah, take a look online for Vruzend. There's a guy on YouTube with a really good channel around e-bikes and batteries and so on. Take a look for him. I think I bought his e-books around how to build batteries, and he is really good with all this stuff. Good source of information. So if you look at these little units, they're plastic, but inside they've got the little metal tabs which are on springs. So inside there they've got little springs the battery presses up against. The only thing that I would change on these, I like the red is positive, but the blue, they should have made those in black just to go with standards. But whatever, as long as you've got your red, that's the important one. So even on both sides it has a little tab in there with a spring underneath there, and then if you flip it over, there's a little screw or a little bolt here. And what that is for is actually connecting, they supply these little bus bars, these little bars, and they slide right over that, and it comes with all of these little nuts. That's probably hard to see with my big fingers in the way, but basically they screw onto there, tighten down, and that way you can hook them together and make your connections. So one of the cool things, you'll see all the little tabs on here. You get tabs all around, and then you get some with the slots. So you get the male and female ends. So as you're building this, if you took, depending on your pack, you're going to use all the blue ones for one row, all the red ones for another row on the other side. But you basically just slide these together. So they lock together like that. And as you can see, you can just continue putting them together. So if you wanted to make a smaller battery, 3 cells, and then on the opposite side, you would do this. So you have your positive and negative, and your positive and negative. Let me just show with one cell. So again, we take the positive side of the cell, we can pop it in. Now one of the things that I do here is I push them down pretty good to seat them. And then again, as you're making the packs, you'll have these lined up in the proper area so that they connect onto the next one. And that slides on. And again, a little bit of pressure. So that one's probably seated in there. One of the things that you'll want to be careful and want to test, once you start putting larger packs together, you have to make sure that your batteries are actually seated and making a connection. So what I have done, and what I would suggest you do, is as you're once you get your pack together, you go through, pull out your multimeter, and test each cell before hooking any of the bars together. So before you start screwing everything together, making all your connections, test each cell. Make sure that from the bolts themselves, you have the proper voltage. Because what will happen as you start to put them together like this, you're not going to be able to get the pressure down on the ends. So what can happen, let me just back that off, you'll see it looks like it's connected. So you'll put your whole pack together, but then if you do your test, you'll see, oh, hold on, that cell's not making a connection. So that's where you have to go in and make sure it's good. Now on their website and on Mika's website, they have a lot of different options on way to do. You should put it on a flat surface. I put it on concrete to do that, but you can do hand pressure. Other suggestions they've said would be using a clamp, and maybe you want to clamp a long board across the top of them, or you can use these and push down somewhat, just to make sure everything is seated in there. So those are some of the tips around that. So once you get it built like this, and like I said, if you took some clamps, put wood on top, bottom, and not a lot of pressure, but enough to seat it. Test, before you put all these bars on, test each individual cell, make sure they're all connected. Then you can go on to start and interconnecting everything. So as you can see here, I just started popping some of the, screwdriver here. I started popping some of these on. Let me just take some of them off here. You have to be very careful that you don't, once you get further into the battery construction, you don't want to be shorting anything out. So a couple things, you may want to keep some paper around just to keep your cell, or some cardboard. As you're doing this and as you've got things connected, just take some paper. I don't really have some around here, but not with this metal tab on it. But anyway, find yourself some paper or cardboard, and as you're putting these on and connecting everything together, just slide this over to protect where you've already connected, because you don't want to have short circuits by dropping this on something you've already connected. So another hint, just get a longer piece, and as you work your way across, keep on sliding it across until you get to the other side, and then you don't have a chance of dropping things on here. Again, don't use anything like this with metal on it. This is just kind of an example. Get a longer piece of cardboard. So when you're building your battery pack with these, or any battery pack, you want to make sure you have your number 1 row of cells and your number, this is going to be 10. So I go from 1 to 10. So that I want to make sure that I mark this as number 1, because when it comes to putting your BMS on there, your battery management, you really have to know where your number 1 cell is, negative and positive, and where your number 10 positive and negative are. So that's going to come in handy. You see I started dropping all my bars on there. I've got my first one. That's going to come down, and it will, where it's in series, it'll come down, it'll connect across the bottom to this one, then back up, and then this connects to that one. Then we go down, this connects across, and up, across, down, across. So you see you have a whole series connection. And then in the end, this is your number 10 positive. So if you're unsure about where you should be connecting, draw this out. Make sure you have some paper all around, just to, because if you connect the bottom here, and then you connect the top, and these batteries are fully charged, some of these cells can throw like 10 amps. So you're going to get some major sparks coming out of this, and possible fire or explosion. So be very careful when you're working with these 18650 cells. They are dangerous. So plan it out on paper. One of the things that really helps is, the color coding on this. You'll know that you're positive. You're always going to go positive to a negative as you're making these connections. But again, don't connect the bottom two and then try to connect the top two and then try to connect the bottom two, or vice versa, because that's a dead short, and that's a lot of power. You figure each one of these could throw 5 to 10 amps, so it's a lot of juice that's going to be there, and it is pretty dangerous. So you want to keep the metal away from everything. Map this out. So as you can see, so I'm coming down over up, and then I'm making my series connection here. These come with all the little nuts that you need to connect it, so I just scoop up one and tighten it down. So what I'll do first, I'll connect all of these with all the little nuts they have. Connect everything, tighten it down. Then I'll come back because there are some end pieces that you'll use to hook up your wires. So they also send you these. So your wire is on this side. Those will bolt on to the positive or the negative. So that's how you make your wire connection onto your battery. Again, you'll unscrew those nuts and this will sit down, and then you'll bolt them back in place. Do that on there, do that on this side. If you're really trying for a lot of current, or you may end up using two of these. So you can connect the wire right across. So there's a lot of different ways. So if you don't feel like out of this you're going to get enough current, or you're going to try to draw too much, maybe you go ahead and connect two of these across the multiple cells. Strip your wire all the way back and then connect it and clamp it into here and here, so that you have a better surface area for your wire. So just some things to think about. But those also come in your pack. And as you put this pack together, you get everything tightened down. They also, you can see the screws in here. So they have these little devices. So there's a metal bar which is threaded at each end and a screw in each end. So what this does is it slides through the battery pack. I'll just put this one here as an example. And on the other side, you just screw in, and it helps keep all of the plastic cells together. Okay. I'm going to take this one back out because I don't need it in there, because I've got some all along this, and that keeps things kind of clamped. You don't tighten those down super snug because the plastic starts to spread, but you tighten it down enough so that these are not going to spread apart as you're doing your thing. Okay, so let me undo that. Let me pop that back out of there. But it's a pretty neat layout. I really like what they come up with. Another suggestion, when you're on their website, you may as well just buy this. This is a 5.5 millimeter, sorry, 5.5 millimeter socket. And that's the size of these nuts. So you may have a 5.5 millimeter laying around, but for the price of this thing here, you may as well just go ahead and get it. Just makes it easier than trying to run around and try to figure out and find a 5.5 millimeter, especially in the US, where everything is the old imperial system. So I just bought it when I bought the kit. It makes things a lot easier. So that is get the box again. That's kind of an overview of solderless battery kit for e-bikes, ESK8, DIY power walls. You can use it for many different things. If you're only going to make one or two batteries, that really doesn't make sense. If you're going to make a bunch of these, then yeah, that makes sense to get a good spot welder for these to make a good connection. You can solder these, but it is not something that I would really suggest doing. Jehu Garcia on his site, he's got some pretty good tutorials on soldering them. But when you put heat on these, there is a danger of these things getting too hot, damaging the cells, exploding, fire, and this is all lithium, so that's pretty dangerous stuff. So if you were going to solder them, what you have to do is get the heat on there quick and off of there quick, while trying to make a good solder connection. So it all comes down to the timing. I don't know, for what I was doing, I wasn't going to go out and buy a spot welder because I'm not going to make a lot of battery packs. So for these things here, a little expensive, but for what I'm doing, it holds the cells in place, makes a great connection, easy to do. I can actually, if I decide in the end I don't want a 10S pack anymore and I want to turn this, instead of a 36 volt battery, take it down to a 12 volt, I can do that just by changing the layout of the cells and just unscrew all these bars and just put them in a new configuration. So that is flexible. So that's why I kind of like these. Again, there's a US distributor. They seem to sell worldwide. Obviously they sell out of India as well because that's where they're made. But I really like the product. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue wiring this up. Put my connections on it for the e-bike. That is about it. If you have any questions about these kits, drop it in the comments. Like I said, pretty impressed with what they are. They're a pretty simple idea, and nobody else has come up with something this easy to use. Snap together like Lego almost. It is pretty amazing. Makes things so much easier. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe.